thanks for volunteering to be interviewed for Inspiring Northeast TV. As you know, the purpose is to just help collect a series of interviews of great people who are making the Northeast a great place to live, in a hope that they might be useful and inspire young people to do great things in the Northeast as well. It is the second part of the Musilience project, which is also about supporting young people as well. So thank you, it's great. Let's just start with asking a few questions. Like when we chatted briefly before, you said that your life had several phases in it. And do you want to just talk a little bit more about that and just briefly those phases?
Yeah, so I'm Ken Patterson. I grew up in Newcastle and I'm from the Northeast. I went to Edinburgh University for 5 years, but then I came back to the Northeast here. And I'm known as a musician, I think, these days by people, but in fact, when I was at school, because I'm an old person, at school you adopted either science or arts, it was in my day, to do O-levels, they were called GCSEs, and then A-levels. And I was always put on the science side. I was seen as being a scientist. And I did have a hope to be a vet. I enjoyed being with animals and I looked after them. I went out for, trial weekends with vets in their cars when I was 15, 16, to observe what they did, that sort of thing. And so I went down that road, and my career took me down a road of science, even though I really enjoyed artwork. I enjoyed painting more than anything else. And I did enjoy my music, although at school, we had a huge, great music department, and we had lots of orchestras, we had lots of choirs, which I was part of all, but it was very strict, and I was a runner, a swimmer, and I was always in a battle with the head of music as to whether I should be swimming or which I should be attending his rehearsals all the time. It was always a battle, and it never settled very well with me. So I didn't see myself as much of a musician, although I was well schooled. I had lots of training in reading and examinations and all of that sort of thing in music. I was channeled down this road of being a scientist. I applied for a vet degree, and I did actually get in. I managed to get enough grades to do it. And I went to Edinburgh and I had a great time there. But almost immediately I got involved in a band because I'd learned to play guitar. I taught myself to play guitar, and suddenly, because I was able to write my own music and arrange my own music with friends of similar like mind, then things seemed to change. And I think maybe I was distracted by that music and the time I put into the music. But after resitting my 2 of the 3 first year exams in the vet course, I then repeated the first year and did a second year of veterinary training. And by the end of that, I got all my exams and I could have carried on, but I was convinced that really maybe it wasn't for me. And although I did enjoy being with animals and so on, it was all head knowledge. It wasn't really very practical, certainly at that point in the degree. And I wanted to move on. And so the only thing I could do was change to a biological sciences degree, which I happily did. And I did psychology as my specialism. In Scottish degrees, you specialise after a time. And by the end of 5 years there, I made an album with the band. It's called Caedmon. It's a folk rock band in the 70s. And we said goodbye to that music. And but I had worked in an art centre when I was in Edinburgh. With the Edinburgh Fringe, this band recorded and did some 10 o'clock in the evening concerts in Fringe for 3 years running. And each time we worked in the cafe as well in order to pay our way. And I really enjoyed working in the cafe and decided that I wanted to go into catering, and that was going to be my career move next. And I applied for Scottish and Newcastle breweries as a graduate, I'm not sure what they call themselves, manager. I didn't get that job. But I did get a job with Phoenix because I thought, well, if I got a job in Phoenix in Newcastle, I'd have some experience in retail. And although I couldn't go on the catering side there, which was what I was really interested in because I didn't have any qualifications for that, I was able to to become an underbuyer. It was called a trainee underbuyer, and I worked in the pet food department, the Christmas department, and eventually I became floor manager of Man Shop in 18 months or something like that. But to be honest, it wasn't for me, and so I don't know. It's about 7 years on from when I first made my choice, and I met this guy in Edinburgh, in the art centre, the Netherbow Art Centre, called Gordon Strachan. He had a big thing about 7 days of the week, and you have the Sabbath day, you have a day off. Make sure you always have a day of change in the week. Work hard, but do something different on the Sabbath day. And he saw life in cycles, that after 6 years, on your 7th year, why not have a sabbatical of some sort, at least a change in what you do. And so I suppose it was about 7 years on from when I initially made my career choice to be a vet to when I finally ended up doing what I really wanted to do, which was to get a cafe, restaurant, tea room, which was in Rothbury. And it was mostly because my uncle died, and he unexpectedly left a little bit of money, which was enough to then think about getting to buy a cafe. So, and I stayed in the cafe for 3 years. And then I went into education. So the 7-year plan doesn't exactly work out. But I think my life has been in cycles where I keep on changing what I do because it's interesting, because it's a bit risky.
Reinvent yourself.
Well, I suppose so. But I mean, it's
same Ken throughout. I mean,
yes, I suppose. Things keep changing anyway. And so I did 3 years in this tea room, and it was fantastic fun, and we were very successful. But I was married and wanted to have children, and we realized that we were working 7 days a week, and it wouldn't be very fair on children to be working the way that we were. And my parents had been teachers. My brother was a teacher. My wife was a teacher. And I decided that probably a good way forward was to become a teacher. And so I did what was called a PGCE, which is a 1-year training course at Newcastle. And because I was a musician, because I could play the piano, essentially, let's not be so grand about it, because I could play the piano a bit, I found that I quite easily got a job in primary education, because people were always looking for somebody who could play the piano in assembly, which is bizarre, but I mean, I think it's true. And I did work with, in my PGC, I worked with Patterson, who was an innovator in primary education, in all music education. And he was a real influence on me, and I used to work as a volunteer on his summer schools in Durham. They were based in Durham. And when I became a teacher, because I could play piano, I got a job quite easily, but discovered actually I really enjoyed working with the music and essentially becoming responsible for music in the school. I was in Kenton-Bar, and then I went to Chillingham Road in Newcastle. And I'd worked with Dodgy Clutch Theatre Company, which was a bit of teacher training for doing drama in the classroom, and with Sarah Kemp, who was the drama advisory teacher at the time. And I worked in the youth theatre because I was invited by Sarah to join it. So there were all these influences upon my teaching from the arts world around me. And so it became an idea to create a community band within Chillingham Road Primary School, which was for the children in the school, but also for any adults that wanted to get involved in a band of some sort. And I called that the Heaton People's Band. But that band soon became the 10th Avenue Band, because we we've named the band the Heaton People's Band, but what does the band want to call itself? And it sounded more racy, more exciting maybe to be called 10th Avenue Band. And so they decided to become the 10th Avenue Band. And that band still exists now, and has gone through all sorts of different phases, but has been very successful as a community band, but also as a performance band, serving the festival circuit, lots of festivals in the Northeast, and other community groups who want to have a band that can come and play live without too much fuss and make an impact, but whatever they're putting on.
International connections as well.
Indeed, yeah. With that, I mean, when we were still probably Heaton People's Band, we had a French person came to join the community band, and she was from a band called Mona Lisa Klaxon, which was in Rouen in western France, northwestern France. and we got invited to go and meet their band, and it was the start of all sorts of international exchange. I do remember, actually, it was Dick Harrison said to me, if you want to travel the world, become a musician, because you get invited to all sorts of different places to play music. As an amateur, I mean, but it's true that if you get yourself into music, you get all sorts of opportunities to go abroad, to go to different places. I mean, we'll have to see whether that's still the case now with Brexit and everything. We've got to try and find ways of making that all happen still, I think. Yes, well, I went freelance for a year in 1990.
Yeah.
As a community musician, thinking I was enjoying education, but I associated more and more with theatre groups and so on, and with community music. I'd met Hugh Nankerval, who's a community musician who works these days mostly in the Southwest, and he was an influence upon me as well. And I wanted to be like him, I decided, and so I changed for a year only, because it was difficult to make money. It was difficult to. I didn't have the skill of selling myself and getting paid very well as a community musician. And when the opportunity arose to apply for a job as advisory teacher in Newcastle schools, I applied for that at the end of that year and managed to get that job. So it meant that I could then work in all the schools in Newcastle and have links to other authorities as well, and to do a much broader job in terms of meeting people and influencing people. But it was more focused, and it wasn't just primary teaching, it was primary music that I was focusing on. I came to this new job as advisory teacher very excited about the idea of empowering everyday teachers, not just musicians, to be able to teach music in their classrooms and be able to play games, to be able to set compositional tasks, which were a bit like storytelling, a bit like things that they would be doing in their language, in their maths lessons, but it would be applied to music, and it would be bringing the curriculum together in some way. So I did that for probably about 7 years. And then in 2000, Folkworks had asked whether I could be seconded from the advisory service in Newcastle to help manage a project which was called Making Music on the Line, which was a Millennium project. And the idea is we're going to get 5 different places which were on the 0 degrees line, the Greenwich Mean Line, to share their music, because they all shared the same sunrise and the same sunset. They were all on the same 0 degrees line. And so we talked to schools in Shetland, we had Northumberland schools, we had schools in Gascony, in Catalonia, Barcelona essentially, and Burkina Faso. And I got the chance to be the coordinator of this project and to work internationally with those 5 places. And there were 2 musicians, a musician teacher and a professional musician from the folk world, largely speaking, because it was Folkworks and Oxfam and Channel 4 TV that were all involved together. I had a chance of coordinating all that and to meet all these different musicians, bring them together, share their repertoire. And then at the end of the year, we were able to then tour the 5 different locations with a band of 10 and play to all the children who had learnt all the repertoire that had been shared. It was an exciting project, really strong. And I think it was that project that then encouraged me to think, well, actually I could now do a broader thing as a freelance again. I'll try and be freelance. And so I teamed up with Richard Scott, who's another teacher, musician who'd worked with the Grand Union Orchestra in London a lot as a professional musician. And he was keen to work in schools more. And it was a career of veering. It's, I've moved from things. And I suppose I never worried too much about money. I've just got on with it. And that money does seem to have I managed to get enough money to get by, based upon hard work and upon the belief that I could do it. I think it's self-belief to get on and do things.
Your skills in networking and people skills are so great. I guess that really helps.
I find that I'm very self-critical, so I find it difficult to analyse what it is about me that has made me successful in the ways that I have been successful. But certainly, I don't see myself as being particularly special. I see myself as an equal with other people and wish to involve people in whatever's going on in whatever way that's possible. As a freelance it gives you a chance to just get involved in a whole broad set of different things in collaboration, always with lots of other organizations. It's been with the Sage Gateshead certainly for 5 or 6 or maybe 7 years that I was very much involved in the run up to the Sage Gateshead being opened, and part of the Co-Musica, it was called the community music team, involved in educational action zones. For example, Seaham and Easington, they had quite a lot of government money to encourage the arts and other curriculum areas, but in my case, the arts. And so we worked closely with Deanside, Infants, and all the schools that were associated in that cluster. We worked with creative partnerships a deal, especially I worked in Corbridge first. That was a school that I worked particularly in, but we did much broader things together. Which was Richard Scott and I, Four Corners Music, working with creative partnerships in Northumberland. We did a project with creative partnerships with Sage Gateshead, Nitin Sawhney, who's a music maker from down south, and filmmakers in the northeast, creating a film called An Anthem for Northumberland that Carol Elevriani led into action. And so it's always, I think it's useful to find collaborators to work with, and sometimes if you're wishing to do things, you have to follow the funding, you would say. So you realize that there's some money available to do something that could be very interesting, and then you put an application in for that funding, or you respond to somebody who invites you to be part of something that they've sought funding for, to then do exciting things. I suppose I've moved into a phase now of seeing myself as being retired. Pretty much, I'm 65 now, and that I've stopped doing so much work. But in fact, because I'm involved in a community band, Mezze Mundo, in particular just now, they've found it very useful to work together by making videos, like a video single. We're a community band, we're a bunch of silver people, mostly older people, who've got together to play on the street, but throughout the last year through lockdown, we've been making videos together. And so I've used the skills. I was just analysing, because you had asked me about what I've been doing in the past. I realised that it was in 2000 with the Making Music on the Line that I first did some video editing, which I used Movie Maker on an Apple Mac. I bought an Apple Mac and did a film which was filming a documentary essentially of what had gone on through the whole year of Making Music on the Line, with his international sharing of music. And I did a lot of editing for that. And since then, I've always made a record of things by making videos. So it's interesting how those skills compound, and then they start to be useful in other applications later on as well.
Well, what next?
What next? I think what I'm enjoying mostly is working more as a composer. And so wishing to try and compose and film make for myself more, but surely it will always be in collaboration with other people. And I have worked closely with Chris Bostock, the storyteller, and with a whole squad of other storytellers, and with theatre people, with Théâtre Sans Frontières, which we've made a video together just this last year as well, called The Golden Conch, which is in collaboration with people in Canada. So to be sat at my desk here and collaborate with other people in that way seems more attractive just now than doing workshops. I got quite tired zooming about the country with djembe. We had a set of 30 djembe drums, African drums, because I'd learned how to play a bit of djembe in Burkina Faso, and I wished to share a bit of that with people, and did an awful lot of lugging drums in and out of cars, and steel pans. I did a lot of steel pan work in the northeast, and again involved an awful lot of hardware, a lot of instruments carrying about. And so the idea of using ideas and creating music, recording music, is exciting to me now. The band I talked about that we had success in the 70s, we still get together now, 40 years on, and we just made an album called Rare, because the album that we made 500 copies of a vinyl album as we left with a farewell concert in 1978, this band Kaiden, and that each of those albums now is worth £500 to £1,000 because there were only 500 made, and each copy is seen to be rare and desirable. I can't quite see it myself, but it is the case. And so we produced an album just recently called Rare, and we made 500 vinyl album copies just to see whether we could sell 500 and see if they became valuable. Yeah. We've only sold about 150. But we do have a bit of a following on Spotify and so on. So it's interesting, it's fun to be making music that way still.
So can I ask you a few direct questions? I'm interested in, you know, you're very creative, successful person who've influenced thousands of people in the Northeast and abroad. You know, it's remarkable. So in the psychologist's chair, can I ask a few questions just to say, well, you've mentioned quite a few things. So what's been the most important thread in your life and in all your projects and careers?
I suppose I always strive to be successful. I put a lot of work and energy into making whatever it is, whatever project it is, successful. Mm-hmm. And often success is difficult to define, but it's when the large numbers of people are involved often, but with a quality and depth to what they do. It's not just tick to say someone has been involved in some way, they've been engaged in, and they've been able to put a bit of themselves into the project as well. So I think that's important to me.
You've mentioned collaboration with others as a massive, motivator, and a reason for success. And obviously, you do clearly get on with lots of people, and as you said, the success, having a successful project is a common thread because you do create successful projects. Mm-hmm. So. All I want to ask is, so what's really important about collaborating with others and having a successful project?
I think, especially with music, it's the belief that the music itself can help people express themselves in ways they wouldn't necessarily have to express themselves before. And with community music, I really like steel pans, and I like the djembe drumming that I've already talked about there, because people, even if they're quite experienced musicians, when they come to an instrument that's arranged in a circle, if it's a steel pan, or if they come to an African drum, which is a hand drum, which has only three basic sounds, but needs an awful lot of skill to be played well, then people come to the instrument afresh, and they come as equals. So you can get people who've never touched an instrument before alongside somebody who sees themselves as quite skilled, and they're put on an equal basis, and it's what they can then put into it of themselves that will help them then be successful or help them express themselves.
So your motivation is to help others express themselves.
I think so, and to have fun.
Yeah, and have fun.
And to grow in themselves, find something new in themselves. The same with to be able to put paint to paper, to be able to express yourself with paint. I think it's a very important thing, and a lot of people, in my experience, have been told as painters, "Oh, that's rubbish. You're not much of an artist." Or they said that at least about themselves. They say, "Oh, I'm not much of an artist. I'm not very good with a pencil," or whatever. The same with music. They've been told at some point, "Well, please mime in the choir. Don't sing because you're not very good, but you can be part of the choir, but don't sing up. Keep it down a bit." Mm-hmm. And I feel shocked at that whole notion, and I would always wish people to play up, to sing up, yes, and to then find themselves within that and to be part of something in a real way. And I suppose maybe it's talking back to the time when I did all this music when I was a schoolboy, but I felt always I was oppressed a bit, and I was told, you must be a good reader, you must be able to join in on the terms of the person who's leading the music, not so much putting yourself into the music. Yeah. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So can I ask another question? And it seems like an obvious question, but why is it really important to you that you see others having fun and growing and being equal? Why is that really important to you?
I suppose I feel that that's the way the world ticks. It's when people get together and do things together that things start to happen, and that people grow, they thrive, they find some happiness is a difficult word to use, I think. Satisfaction. They can explore their emotions, they can find out a bit more about themselves by working alongside with other people.
So you've talked a lot
Yeah.
about others. So what's really important to you about this on a personal level?
I think I want to belong, and I want to be needed by other people. So there's an element of me finding niches, finding places that I'm happy with myself, alongside people that I feel. I mean, that's what friendship is, isn't it? It's finding people that you have similar uh, values, similar beliefs, similar feelings with, and then being able to extend your understanding with them as well.
Yeah.
In terms, I'm just trying to think of how to be helpful to somebody who's just setting out. If they are a young person, I think the whole world now seems to be about trying to make a good impression upon people by the way you look, by the selfie you take, by preparing yourself to be cosmetically, in the first instance, attractive to people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, it's much more important to understand people underneath, and the initial impressions, although of course they must affect me, that's not the important thing. It's to have depth of relationship in my music, in my friendship, in my collaborations with others. Yeah. And so if I were young setting out now, I would always say, well, work hard at what you do, seek out people that you think you trust and that you can share your beliefs with and your understanding with, and seek out people who will take a risk with you and take that risk. And if things go wrong, you can only always change, and you can always depend upon others to help you out as well. That measure your risk, but take a risk. Yeah.
You said that it was important to you to feel that you belonged and that that felt needed. Why is that really important to you?
I don't know. I think it's within us all, the need to belong.
Yeah, well, many people. Yeah.
Certainly within me, the need to belong to. But I mean, I think I'm quite a shy person in many ways as well. I'm not, I can be extrovert. I'm an extrovert introvert. Mm-hmm. But largely speaking, if I walk into a room, people don't turn their heads and say, "Oh, it's Ken." I'm rather more quiet as I come into a room, and so I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but yeah.
It seems that all the things you do help you connect with other people, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. And for many people who struggle to make connections, then the arts is a fantastic.
Definitely. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And
Go
those who don't read or write very well, I think music and artwork and drama, anything where you can express yourself, you can talk about yourself, you can share a bit of yourself without having to get to read it or to write it down or put it into any highfalutin terms or take exams for it. Yeah. I think that's not the important thing. It's being able to say who you are and be able to express yourself. That's important.
Of course, film is a much faster medium these days, isn't it?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, yeah.
More influencing as well sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
We can end the interview here. I've got a few more questions, but we could go on all day.
Yes, well, we've probably gone on too long anyway for anybody's interest. But, yeah.
Okay, one question then, last question.
Okay.
When you do a successful project, how do you know you've done a good project?
Well, I think firstly, I would always, in a design for a project, always have a celebration at the end of it. So there was always a sense of people, it's pretty much they're always performance-based for me. Even if it were just to make a video, at the end, I hope that that video would be a celebratory thing. It would, people would get a chance to see it. And if it were a performance with a band, you work hard and then you share together in the enjoyment of that performance.
Yeah.
So that would be the first main biggest feedback. I've learned, especially if you've got funders involved in giving you money to help you put something on, then you would, at the start of the project, say what your criteria for success were going to be at the start. You'd say, I think I'm going to be successful if these things happen. And then at the end, you appraise it and say, have these things actually happened? But also in an open-ended way to build upon it for the future. Well, what have I learned, and what has been a surprise, what has been surprisingly important to us all in the project, and maybe that'll steer us off in a new direction. So it's a summative way of moving on. Yeah.
Sorry, I've just got one last question, then we will finish. It all sounds like it's been easy and plain sailing. Have you had to overcome any really big obstacles along the way? And how did you do it?
I think I've never really been challenged beyond my ability to keep things moving. So when I failed my vet exams, I did resit them. I did see the thing through to an extent, but then got to a position that I thought, right, I'm in a position in which I can now move on and do something different. I can use that as a new launch pad. I've had the experience. It's been great, but I understand now that maybe I should do something a little bit different.
Have you had any really any nightmares about not earning money or anything like that? You know, that's been hard.
I think when I talked about the year I had in 1990 when I had a go at being freelance, and I found I just didn't quite have enough money coming in to do what I wanted to do and to pay the bills. So that's why I made a change. I think that's it. I think you take risks. And I've always, see, I'm from, my mum and dad went through the Second World War. They probably, mum would have gone to art college and my dad, I think, would have gone into trades in some way. He was a bookbinder and so on. So I'm not working class. I don't think. They had very middle class values as they came out of the Second World War. They wanted me to be able to buy my own house. They wanted me to go to grammar school, which was a free, what do you call it, a direct grant school. It was a place where people could go. But I see myself as having privilege through my life. But these days when I analyze it, I see actually I'm probably, you could say I was from a working class background. We never had very much money, but we've always had the attitude that we want to measure risk and make sure you have somewhere to live at the end of it and so on. Whereas a true artist maybe never thinks about anything like that. They're just driven by the art itself and the expression itself. So I think I'm realistic and maybe a bit middle class, and that's evident. I'm a white 65-year-old man with my own place that I live in.
It boils down to confidence then. What did your parents do to give you confidence?
I don't know. I think I think it is a lot to do with self-confidence, and that my parents must have brought me up to say, give it a go, have a go. And largely speaking, I had success all the way through. When I took my driving test, I expected to pass, and I did pass. So I don't think I've got any. My musical talent is limited compared to an awful lot of people I know. But what talent I have got, I'm able to share in some way. I think, you know.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Ken, for this interview today. It's been very interesting. And I look forward to more music once this COVID's out the way.
Yes, I mean, that's the thing we miss, is being able to play with other people live. And we were managing 2 or 3 of us to get together in the open air until before Christmas, and then things started to change, and really it's been impossible to play live with anybody.
We'll have to have a big party when it's all over.
Yes, and well, I think there's going to be a lot of Phoenix-like projects where we rise from the flames and do wonderful stuff.
Yeah. Reflect on our learnings.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.